Dr. Bruton Foster before I came to Downstate. And so sometime during my tenure at Brooklyn Health Disparities Center, this lady came, her name was Carla Bruton Foster, and we sat down and we had this discussion that literally, by the time we were both finished, we knew we didn't need to meet too often because the ideas were just banging off of the walls. And she's a dynamo. So I am just so thrilled and pleased to know her. And her presentation is going to be dynamic just because that's the way she is. And so I invite Dr. Carla Bruton Foster. And I also want you to know she's a part of Transport, and really it's because of her that today exists. She thought we weren't going to do it, but we do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Straker. And we also became close friends because we both like to shop. So I was on jury duty in August, and I said, ma'am, we're on break for an hour. What do I do? And then she sends me a list of stores downtown Brooklyn to go shopping, so thank you. Okay, thank you. So Translational Program of Health Disparities Research Training Program, Transport. So I'm going to discuss with you a particular area of interest that I have, that is biomedical research diversity. Okay, so the mission, right? What is Transport? The mission of Transport is to provide a foundation at SUNY Downstate for growing and developing a diverse biomedical research workforce that's going to position us at SUNY Downstate to be national leaders in translational research, health disparities, and population health research, and ultimately to really contributing to addressing some of the health inequities and social determinants that contribute to poor health in our community. And Transport is designed to develop the infrastructure to make this happen, right? But in order for us to reduce health disparities, we have to develop an infrastructure that can accelerate the pace with which discoveries are made. We have to translate these discoveries into evidence-based, patient-centered, effective therapies that resonate and align with the goals and priorities of the community. And we really have to pay attention to the community's needs, and that's why understanding the social determinants is critically important. And having a research biomedical workforce that understands this, that can go with and work with the communities and develop research with the communities and research that aligns with community priorities, and that really community researchers who really understand what's at stake. So as Dr. Straker said, we also have to foster trusting community partnerships, and lastly, build and sustain this diverse biomedical research workforce, right? So how do we go from here to here? These are my kids. This is about 20 years ago. My oldest son, Jordan, is at Oxford studying clinical psychology, and Justin is at LaGuardia High School, and he wants to be the next Steven Spielberg, Donald Glover, you name it, movie producer, right? But something happened from here. Something happened. So I'm a physician. I went to SUNY Downstate. My husband's a physician, and my father-in-law's a doctor, right? But we thought they were interested in the sciences. Actually, Jordan is. Jordan is interested in clinical psychology, and he's interested in research. But if you ask them about medicine, ooh, yuck, no, not medicine. And I'm like, why not? And he said, Mom, all you do is come home, you talk about your patients, your residents, your dean, and your chair. Who talks to their chair all day? What is your chair saying to you? So he never really understood why was I always talking about this chair, right? So I don't know if it's something that Jordan and I did to make them lose interest, right? But somewhere, this is maybe 6 and 10, And somewhere between here and high school, they lost interest in science. They were still interested in education because they knew better that you do not live at 1224 Ditmas Avenue unless you're in school, right? All right, you know, and then if then you're moving out, right? But that was just the rule. You can stay here as long as you're in school, or, you know. So they knew they were going to college, they knew that. But this whole idea of science was like, yuck, ew, no, I don't want to do science, I hate science, and I don't know what happened. I honestly don't know what happened. And again, my kids are great. I'm really blessed to have them. They're really fun kids. But I sort of feel like, what did I do to make them have this almost disdain for science? Like, what happened, right? So this, my oldest son, Jordan, went to Stuyvesant High School, and he was one of 4 young black men in his school, the entire school of like, what, 700, 800? And he went in loving science. I mean, he went to Stuyvesant, right? He went out hating science, hating it. This one right here wanted so much to be like Jordan that anything that Jordan hated, he hated. Jordan hated broccoli, he hated broccoli, right? Jordan hated DC, he hated DC. Jordan loved the Avengers, and this is for you, Dr. Reinhardt. We had this discussion about Avengers. He loved Avengers, right? So anything that Jordan wanted to do, he hated, right? So we were stuck here, right? But then how do we move from here to here, right? These are 2 of our fellows, Dr. Ojini and Dr. Sola. They're in a program, a faculty development program known as ECRIP. And then how do we get from here back to here so that they're supporting these kids, right? So that's what I want to talk about. So we know that there is a gap in the number of women and underrepresented minorities who remain in STEM fields. And this comes from the NSF that shows that, as you see from this slide, the majority of people who are entering STEM engineering fields, science fields, are white men, with about 18% women, 4% black women and Hispanic or Latino women, and about 7% black men and 21% Asians, right? So what are we doing? How do we address this? Well, the literature does show that early exposure, participation in undergraduate research programs significantly increases the intention to enroll in a STEM program. And this early exposure may do what social scientists call developing science identity, right? You identify with science, you like science, you understand the language, you begin to speak the language, you begin to sort of hang around with a social network that sort of reinforces this. You see yourself as a scientist. You see yourself as a researcher. You see yourself as a nurse. You see yourself as a physical therapist. You see yourself as a physician. You have to see yourself, right? So this science identity, and by seeing yourself, you do the things to develop confidence, to develop self-efficacy. So this frame here talks about persistence, right? Early exposure, active learning communities will help to support this science identity, and this learning of the science will help to promote, to increase confidence, motivation, right, and continue it, right? So early exposure is critically important. So this brings us to Transport, the Sprinter program. So Sprinter stands for Summer Program in Translational Disparities and Community Engaged Research. So what is Sprinter? Sprinter is a program that provides undergraduate, underrepresented minorities and women with an opportunity to gain this early exposure that we've been talking about. The underlying philosophy is that we believe that early exposure leads to increased interest and persistence. And the long-term goal is persistence, pursuing graduate training, pursuing a terminal doctorate degree, and NIH funding. And I say NIH funding because this is an NIH grant. But other funding, of course, is important. Foundation funding, RWJ funding, HRSA funding, right? But for the NIH, they want to see that we're creating a pipeline that's going to contribute to more NIH funding. So who are our partners? We were really fortunate. Like I think we got notice of award in like August, September or something. And then right around, was it December, we said, oh, we have to do something. We have to develop a program. We have these objectives. We have a progress report, you know, because we were all basking in this, like, we got $10 million, yay, but now we actually have to get to the work of doing something. So we called our friends, Doctors Shell and Diaz from Albany. I don't know if they're still here. They're upstairs. Oh, okay. So Dr. Shell and Dr. Diaz. We called our colleagues from Brooklyn College, Dr. Blackman and Dr. DeBoers, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, Medgar Evers, Dr. Blackman and Dr. DeBoers, right? And from Brooklyn College, Dr. Gail Horowitz and Heinlein. And I think Dr. Ogunwambi and Dr. Skeet were also from Medgar's, right? So if you can raise your hands, thank you so much. Raise your hands, right? Don't be shy. These are our colleagues and friends from Medgar Evers. And we called on them and said, let's make this work. Let's make this work. So remember Dr. Straker was talking about community, right? Always going back to the community. Here we are, the only medical school in Brooklyn, and we have some great academic institutions that we need to partner with. In Albany, Brooklyn College, and Medgar Evers. We can walk to Medgar Evers. We can walk to Brooklyn College also. Walking to Albany might take a little longer. But we do have this great community that we really, with tremendous resources that we need to leverage, right? So we leveraged our existing partnerships. We established a working group to identify what the program would look like. We developed selection criteria, and each institution was asked to identify a student who they felt would benefit the most from the program. And the reason we did this was because we wanted to get started quickly. The first year was 5 students, and each year would increase by 5 to year 5, we would have 25 students moving forward. So this first year, we asked each school to identify at least 2 students, and we would look at, from this cohort of about 6 to 10 students, select 5. So the eligibility was for rising sophomores who are in good academic standing. And we didn't actually, initially we had a number there. And some of our colleagues said that some students are entering college and they're not meeting this threshold. And it's no fault of their own. I mean, if we go back to, how my sons just fell out of love with science. So, to know for them, these are hard-working students. Some students who are working 2 jobs. These are hard students. These are the students we want to work with and make an investment in, right? So we had to not take shortcuts, really. I don't think we were lowering the bar. In fact, we were raising the bar because we wanted the students who were first-generation immigrants, working 2 or 3 jobs. No one in their family has been to medical school or has a nursing degree. Those are the students. So in essence, we talk about like lowering the bar, but we're really raising the bar. If you can do all that and maintain a good GPA and you demonstrate that you're really interested in science, then we want you. And we came across with this idea based on speaking with our partners. So the length of a program was 7 weeks, 7 scheduled Monday through Fridays, 9 to 5, and they were given a stipend. So the didactic components, we had health disparities lectures, introduction to biostats, and journal club, community-based organization visits, SUNY Albany visits, and mentored research project. So the didactic component was inquiry-based. So we basically modeled it on what the medical students are doing. So the medical students, I don't know if we have medical students here. Raise your hand, don't be shy, right? So they have this inquiry-based where they're given a case and they go about asking questions relevant to the case, and that's how they learn. And this is how we taught this summer because, I said, well, I don't really want to give a talk on cardiovascular disease, mental health, diabetes, and sickle cell. I don't want to stand there and lecture. I'll give you a case. Patient presents with chest pain, shortness of breath. What do you think is going on? They tell you that they have a family history. Why is that important? What do you do? What do you tell them and why? So they have to research this and present and work in groups. And these, as you see, these topics align with what Dr. Salafu said before, the thematic theme of transport. So we wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, there's a thread that underlies what we're doing in transport. Okay. So then they had an intro to research methodology and statistics. Is Miss J there? Yes. So Tina, raise your hand. So she taught biostats to the students. Basically, she taught them data collection, choosing the right test, interpreting your result, presenting your results, and visualizing your data. So basically, she said, bring me all of your data. Just bring them to me. Look at them. Tina likes to say, there's a story behind these numbers. What are the numbers saying to you? Talk to the numbers, talk back to them, right? And students were coming in like, the numbers are talking, but I don't know what they're saying. right? So we wanted them, and that's the aspect of science identity, that you own it. You have to own what you're doing, right? So we wanted them to own this experience and talk the data. So going back to what Dr. Straker was saying, community, so Arthur Ashe, so we had site visits. We wanted them to understand that the health disparities that they're reading and studying about are not occurring in a vacuum, and also to look at it from an asset-based perspective, that there are assets in the community. A lot of times, oftentimes we talk about disparities as if the community is just sitting there waiting for us to come and save them. Where the truth is that there are a lot of community organizations that are actively engaged, building capacity. You know, they've been doing it before we got here, right? So we had them meet with members of the Arthur Ashe Institute, the Caribbean Women's Health Association. They went to SUNY Albany, and the Department of Health. They actually had a mental health first aid training. So the mentored research program. So this was the fun part, where the students actually got to collect their own data and analyze it. Now, a lot of these projects were not new projects because we only had our students for 7 weeks. So these were projects that were ongoing that they took a part in, right? So I said we had 5 students. So we selected 5 students, but 1 student wasn't able to participate. And then this student just like shows up. She was working with one of the faculty members here, and the faculty said, I have a student, she's really great. I'm not quite sure what project to put her on. We're like, well, let's see what we can do. And it just worked out that we have the student. So she's from Spelman. So our students are from different schools. So Adia Benjamin is from Spelman, Jorge Lata is from Brooklyn College, and Abira Khalid is from Medgar Evers. So they worked on a project that looked at a study to reduce sodium intake, and this was their slide. This is the first page of their PowerPoint slide that they created. And their project focused on measuring psychometric properties of a dietary adherence scale in end-stage renal disease. So they had to read about end-stage renal disease. They had to understand what were the psychometric properties of a survey, of a scale. Then they had to look at, you know, again, we have numbers, right? What's the story that the numbers are trying to tell us? And that can be best told in the context of what patients are actually telling us. So they also had to analyze qualitative data. And the students did an amazing job. Dr. DeBoers and Blackman, Abira did an amazing job. And I wish we had, you know how they have like TV bloopers? We actually have videos of them preparing for this talk. And it was like, Abira Khalid, take 16, because we had to do it over and over again. You know, remember when we did it upstairs in the video? And we videotaped them talking, and then we showed them. And I'm like, this is what you look like when you talk. Are you okay with this? If someone were to, you know, bust in here and take this and put this on CNN or Fox, well, CNN, what would you want them? Let's bring it back. How would you feel, right? This is you on television. Are you okay with that? And we spent a couple of hours rehearsing, going through the talk. So that's, these are these students. Chris DeRosen. So Chris worked with Dr. Michelle Patu and her team looking at endorsement of mental health symptoms in African Americans. And Chris came in and he wanted to be a physical therapist. What? Physician assistant, thank you, Tina. And he said he was interested in research, he wanted to become a physician assistant, but wasn't quite thinking about research. And then he left the program saying he's actually thinking about getting a research doctoral degree to go along with his being a physician assistant, right? So he actually started thinking about this. This is Janessa. Where is Dr. Reinhardt? Janessa. Janessa is a student from Albany, so she looked at the association between frailty and dementia. We could not get Janessa to talk. We could not get her to talk. She was extremely, extremely intelligent. All of the students are extremely intelligent. But Janessa basically said, I do not like talking. You're not gonna make me talk. She was like, that's that, right? But when you asked Janessa a question, she explained it. She understood Alzheimer's, she understood frailty. And we had to do several takes to get her to feel comfortable. And it goes back to that confidence, right? if we give her the confidence that she can do it, and then we show her the slides, the takes, this helps to instill the confidence and the self-efficacy to do it the next time. So Janessa's talk was just amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Reinhardt. I mean, she blew it out the box. She really did a great, and this was very complicated. There was a lot of data. Some of the data had been collected, not all of it. So she did a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful talk. And thank you, Dr. Reinhardt, for really working with Janessa. This is Dalene Paredes. So Dalene is a student at Brooklyn College. She looked at comparisons of live births between African-American women with schizophrenia and those without the disease. And she did a terrific job. Dalene, I think, was one of the students who came in. I mean, I think like the numbers were speaking to her out loud, because she was in the office almost every single day. I'd walk in, I'm like, hi, Dalene, right? She actually came back. After the program ended, she came back. I'm like, Dalene, the program's over. You do know that, right? But she came back and she actually worked with Dr. Patu. Like, I would see her on the bus. And I'm like, is this woman following me? And she's like, no. I'm like, where are you going? She's like, I'm going to Downstate. I'm like, the program ended like 2 weeks ago. She's like, no, I'm still working with Dr. Patu. And I actually think she applied, and I don't even know if she did receive, was it Mark? Right? So after this, she came back. She got it? She applied for a program, NIH Mark Program, which is to develop careers in underrepresented minorities in undergraduate schools, and received this. So after this program. So this was a great program. So we wanted to hear what the students had to say about the program. And this is what one of the students said. The Sprinter has allowed me to explore and learn more about science in many different forms. During the summer, I learned a lot from the lectures, the site visits, going to the anatomy lab, and doing research. The Sprinter program allowed me to get great exposure to scientific and professional development, a professional environment. In addition, it allowed me to see all of the aspects that go into research in medicine. The Sprinter program enhanced my approach to the study of science because it challenged me to dig deeper. We did challenge them. We really did. It was a lot in 6 weeks, really, and we challenged them. The Sprinter program has made me more confident because of the prep classes we took, like data analysis. It made me more knowledgeable about the different tests that I can run on my data. The Sprinter program helped me to become more confident when conducting scientific research and inspired me to pursue a medical research career. The most significant experience I had during my 7 weeks was having the continuous support of the staff, other students and faculty, and Miss Tina, like they called her. And I received enough support to be successful from my mentors because they were always available. So what this tells me is that you can increase confidence in students. You can increase their interest to pursue, as we saw from Chris and Dalene, and the social support is incredibly important. You know, these students are constantly hearing, or maybe not even being told directly, but images in the media that they can't. You know, there's report that African Americans are about 13 less likely than Caucasians to receive their first NIH grant, and this is after training, right? We know that less than half, about half, the attrition rate is about 45% or so from academia for PhD recipients, and we know it's higher among racial and ethnic minorities. So we're constantly hearing in this barrage of statements that we can't, and hopefully this program would show them you can, and you did it. So at the end of this, they had to present their talk and have a written proposal. So lessons learned, it is feasible to implement this program that's multi-component. So it wasn't only the didactic component, it was the case-based components, it was the site visit, it was the journal club and the discussions. So in the journal club discussions, we gave them the articles that would align with some of the topics that we discussed. They had to read it and present it together as a group to their colleagues. The students had positive assessments of the program. So we have to continue to engage the students, because one of the challenges that we're having is I know they're back at school, but to bring them back in. So to really keep them engaged in this program so we can continue to support them longitudinally to see what the outcomes are. And it's important not only for the grant, but I think it's important for them to know that once you're a Sprinter student, you're always a Sprinter student. We also have to recognize that as much as we loved all of these students, there are some hurdles, the GRE and the MCAT. So for students who are interested in going for graduate degrees, that we have to figure out a way of making sure that they get the support that they need. And Dr. Daniels Asaze just got, she's here, just got a $3.5 million grant. Woo! that will enable us to really do this through our Emmy program. Engage the mentors. Thank you so much to Drs. Patu and Dr. Reinhardt for really just stepping up and saying, yes, yes we can, and they were very supportive. And then we have to increase this number by 25. So this is Sprinter. It's new. I'm excited about it. Again, we could not have done it without our partners from Medgar Evers, without our partners from SUNY Albany and Brooklyn College. I think, what was wonderful about this first cohort was that they were selected by the faculty. Like, the faculty knew them. They were like, you have to pick the student. Don't worry, don't look at the grades. Don't look at the grades. Let me tell you about what this student is doing before they come to school, right? Before they come to school, what this student is doing, and then after school, supporting their family, going to work. So we're looking forward to the future of Sprinter. We're about movement, transport, Sprinter. You get the theme here? Yeah. Okay. So I'd really like to thank our mentors, again, Drs. Patu and Dr. Reinhardt, the Sprinter team, Ms. Ajay or Ms. Tina, Ms. Bowman, Dr. Ejini, I don't know if he's here. Oh, yes, we called him one day, we're like, what do you know about sickle cell anemia? Can you teach this class on sickle cell anemia? And he did it. Dr. Ejini is an aspiring HEMONC fellow, so we thought this would be fitting for him to do. Ms. Daniels Asaze for her support. Ms. Lakia Maxwell, I don't know if she's here, for helping us with recruitment. Dr. Straker, again, our friends from Albany, Brooklyn College, and Medgar. So thank you, and this is our class of 2018. Okay, so the next segment is, so I talked about undergraduate, right? So let's say we're successful, we get our students to get into graduate training programs, and then what, right? So that's another hurdle. Maintaining and sustaining a diverse biomedical research workforce means like we probably need to start earlier than undergraduate, and Dr. Marilyn Fraser with the Arthur Ashe Institute does have high school programs and younger programs. So Sprinter and Emmy and summer research, we have a whole host of programs for the graduate program. But then when students become scientists, right, we think they've identified as scientists, there are still hurdles to persisting in academia. It's tough, right? So we have two of our trainees here, if they can make their way up, please. Milena and okay. So they're part of a program that's called ECRIP, Empire Clinical Research Investigators Program, that supports clinician investigators to address disparities. Do you have to leave soon? Do 2 seconds then? Okay, so come on, and then you can just walk off. Like why don't we start with, well, actually, you can just talk from, well, you want to come up and talk, say who you are, what you do, and then you can be out and get on the queue. This is Douglas Mansell. So why don't you just start, and Doug, again after you introduce yourself, I know you have to leave. And this is to talk about how do we retain our faculty, women, underrepresented minorities in research, in academia, because we have talented folks here, and how do we make sure they stay in academia and we don't lose them to other forces. So Doug, why don't we start?
Yeah, it just, you want to use this? Okay. Again, Douglas Mansell, Howard University graduate, PhD in molecular biology with specialization in cell-mediated immune responses. Hello? Okay. I am a postdoctoral fellow at the Weill Cornell Institute. I think we have a partnership with SUNY Downstate, Cornell Presbyterian SUNY Downstate collaboration. My opinion with retaining underrepresented minorities in the STEM is simply mentorship. I have two mentors. I actually have two mentors, Dr. Foster and Dr. Ferrongi, and I have two mentees, one from George Washington and in DC, and one from Howard University. And I think the connection in retaining them in the STEM is simply knowledge. They don't know where to apply. They don't know how to apply. They're simply robust, talented individuals with no direction. So what worked for me is that in order for me to get this actual fellowship, I actually came to Downstate, and I spoke to Dr. Foster, but I met Dr. Foster through Dr. Roman, and I had to simply hand in my application and said, hey, I have some kind of intellectual talent. I would like to pursue STEM-related research, especially in molecular biology. How can you help me? And then he referred me to Dr. Foster. Dr. Foster referred me to Dr. Ferrongi, and now I have a fellowship with Cornell. So, like I said before, my quick synopsis is that you simply need mentorship, and you need to reach out to them because they don't know how to reach out to you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Milena Rodriguez, and I came to Downstate because I was going to do a fellowship in rheumatology, and at the same time, I was very interested in neuroscience, which is something that is very hard to combine. And then, thanks to the graduate school and Dr. Stewart, I was able to combine both things, and I've been working on that since I came in 2016. I just finished a fellowship in rheumatology, like in June, and then at that moment I was very involved with the thesis for the PhD as well, and then I was trying to find a way to continue doing research, but I wasn't sure what to do. And then that was the way I was able to apply for the ICRIP fellowship, and actually the ICRIP fellowship is something that is going to allow me to continue in this pathway. My PI is Dr. Butin Foster, and my main research is, I'm a rheumatologist, I was saying before, I'm interested in inflammation and how systemic inflammation can be regulated in some way by the nervous system, and how the nervous system and physiology could regulate inflammation. We know that systemic inflammation is related with many of the diseases that we have been talking about today, like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, like autoimmune diseases, specifically in my case. And we know that our population specifically has a higher prevalence, and specifically the population that we take care of in Downstate have a higher population of all these diseases where inflammation in the background has a huge role in the pathogenesis. Then there is a physiologic way to control the systemic inflammation, which is called the anti-inflammatory pathway, and there is a way to regulate this through the brain, and then that's why I'm involved in research, and that's what I'm interested in. And one part of the research will include treatment and research with patients who has obesity. And they also have like a Hispanic background, an African American background, because the obesity is worse in this type of population, and we're basically finding immune markers that will predict if these patients will be able to develop a worse disease or not. That's one of the things, and the other thing that has been recently shown in a very recent research is how the impact of bicarbonate will be able to enhance this anti-inflammatory pathway through the brain as well. And actually the use of PPIs as a potential factor of worsening kidney disease, hypertension, and inflammation, specifically in African Americans. And then the third aim of my project is related with this. Then I'm very grateful for the ICRIP, and thanks to ICRIP, we're going to be able to be involved in this research with obesity and how the brain is regulating this anti-inflammatory pathway and suppressing inflammation.
Morning, everybody. It's afternoon now. My name is Egini, Dr. Egini. I trained as an internist. I guess my journey to research is a little bit, convoluted. I was born in Nigeria, and I don't know if there's any Nigerian here, but if you were born in Nigeria, depending on where you come from, there's this saying: you are either a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer, or you are useless. And it's now that's of course not true, but most Nigerian families, particularly in my part of the country, would think that anybody else who is not any of the first three I mentioned is quote unquote useless. I know that's wrong, but so for me, eventually going to medical school in Nigeria, I realized that there's a lot that we could. I began to realize that there's a lot that we were not told, besides clinical medicine, which I love, but there was a lot that we're not told. And part of that included that it's possible for us to engage in research and be able to help our people better. And so that actually was so after medical school and all that I had to do, eventually got a scholarship and take a master's in biomedical science in Sweden. And later on, of course, found myself here. I just completed internal medicine training here in Brooklyn. And so during my training, one of the things I realized being in Brooklyn is that which is also a big problem in Nigeria, being particularly again, part of my ongoing interest, residency through in hematology and oncology. One of the things I realized was that I thought that we could do a little bit more for sickle cell patients. And so during residency, one of the things I focused on was working with sickle cell patients, particularly to see if we could, potentially begin to think about new ways to manage their or improve the frequency of the vaso-occlusive crisis. And unfortunately, one of the studies that we tried to do here in Brooklyn didn't completely pan out. The reason was because, again, there were a couple of bottlenecks in the way, and then, again, most of the patients weren't research naive because they had been used by pharmaceutical companies, they had paid, I didn't have all that kind of money. So eventually we had to transition that study back to Nigeria. So we were able to work with some of the hematologists back in Nigeria at one of the teaching hospitals in Lagos, and to look at in vitro reactive oxygen species and how to modulate them and see if potentially we can reduce the amount of sickling that occurs with vitamin C in vitro with those patients. So we did that study last year. This year, just before we finished residency, I kind of started looking at statins too as a way to mediate interaction of sickle cells with endothelial cell membrane. So one of the reasons why after residency I decided to take on this program, the Empire Clinical Research Investigator Program, ECRIP, with Dr. Foster, thank you, is because I realized that there is a reason we need research requires mentors, a mentorship, and I guess the ECRIP formed a very interesting, proper, good background, working with people who are experienced and who have done this to help to begin to formulate ideas and articulate them properly and in such a way that they could actually make sense. So that's why I joined the program. And I think, again, like Douglas said before he left, a mentorship is a really, really, really big, particularly for people who are not self-motivated to get involved, really, really big thing for people who want to get involved. Thank you.
So if you can just speak on any particular barriers that either you or perhaps your colleagues met when they wanted to do research and were faced with challenges?
Now, so I've been at Downstate since July 1, and I can say, working with Dr. Foster, that she's been open, and I guess yesterday I even had an idea, because I had a conversation with somebody on something, and we really explored, we had some time to talk about this. And so I may not particularly be able to speak so well about what happens downstate so far, except to say that it's been encouraging, so far. My previous experience working with these sickle cell patients as a resident was, number one, was that, again, it was a community-based program. It was in teaching hospital. So, many of the attendees didn't seem to be interested. Again, I think Dr. Fraser? Dr. Straker, I'm sorry. Dr. Straker pointed that out during her presentation about interest of particularly community hospitals, teaching hospitals not having adequate resource or manpower to be able to help people who are interested. So I guess one of the biggest things I had was that I simply had a name on the IRB of a principal investigator because you had to do that. Yeah, I couldn't be the principal investigator. But beyond that, I did all the work myself, almost all the work myself. So that was that was a problem, no mentorship, that's 1, 2. And I think there were quite a few residents, if I recall, who wanted to do something. They just couldn't figure out where to start from, so that's one. Number 2 is, again, I mentioned the fact that particularly this set of patients, the sickle cell patients, were not research naive in the sense that a lot of pharmaceutical companies that had worked with them prior to development of what we have now as Endary L-glutamine, many of these patients were involved and they got money from it. Now I was coming to say, well, can we do this? And I wasn't bringing money, I wasn't giving them anything. So that was also a problem. Any incentive. So that was also a problem. So I think that was a surmountable problem, but I guess mentorship is really more of a bigger problem than and of course, statistics. I think, I have to say this, I think because at the end of the day, you collect this data and then you start working through it. I remember talking to Tina 2 weeks ago to say, if you can help me walk through some of the data we collected, because I was looking at the thing, and I told Dr. Foster, I said, I used to be very good with maths until I went to medical school. I don't know what happened after that. So, those are,
Statistics definitely is hard. But as Oji was saying, I think that when you go to med school, something changed in your brain in some way. And I don't know, you're so busy the whole time. And I think that when you're going to embrace a career in research, you need tools that definitely will take you a lot of time to get them on your own. And sometimes you can't. And I think that's where eCRIT, for example, and all the support that we receive in Downstate could be very helpful, because we basically do not have the tools. I mean, besides that, for example, I'm a foreign medical graduate. He's from Nigeria, I'm from Cuba. Then I came a few years ago, and it has been a hassle for me because I have to go through the whole steps again. You know how it is for all of us go through that, and it's just at the end, I don't remember many of the things that I had at the beginning. Then just facing that again and getting the tools that we need is a big step. And the other thing that is also, I think, very important in this case is that for you to be successful in research, I'm starting to learn, it's very important to go to the right places and navigate the right channels. For example, I need money to do research. I mean, in order for you to be able to have your own idea, and you need grants. And then just write in the right words and submit an application. I think it's a huge accomplishment if by the end of the fellowship we'll be able to do that and be in a good shape to compete.
Thank you so much. I just wanted for you to hear from our trainees. And what Oge said that, so I'm from Haiti. I don't know if there's anyone here from Haiti, but I grew up, you raise your hand? I grew up hearing the same thing. So you're gonna be a nurse, a doctor, a teacher, or what, right? And we have a large Caribbean population. You know, we have a large Caribbean population with parents who want their students to become the nurse, the physical therapist, the teacher. And we're right here in the community. You know, so it should be relatively easy for us to engage our students, and that's why we want to work with Brooklyn College and Medgar Evers, because these are the students who perhaps were told in their family, well, this is what you're going to do, and then something happens in school or medical school, something happens, and this whole identity, science identity, STEM identity diminishes, right? So we have a tremendous opportunity here to really not only develop research scientists, but really change agents who understand the sort of social milieu and the fact that our students are from diverse backgrounds is critically important to advancing research. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite another person that I've had the pleasure of working with, Dr. Stewart. Now, Mark Stewart is one of these unsung heroes. So what happens with Mark is people don't recognize that you say, I need such and such. You won't hear from Mark, but you'll hear from his assistant who will say he may be in his lab, et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line is that you get what you need. And so I want to thank him in advance for that. I've worked with him at the Brooklyn Health Disparities Center, and there's rarely a time when he says no. So welcome.
I'm just going to add a couple of points to what's going on so far that at least I've had the chance to hear. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Stewart. I'm the Dean of the School of Graduate Studies here. I've had the pleasure of working with folks like Larry Schell, Jim Diaz, and others from the University of Albany. I joke with them that it's actually less time for me to commute from my home in New Jersey to Albany than it is here into Brooklyn. Sometimes I could drive to Albany and back in less time than it takes me to go one direction. Our friends at Medgar Evers, we've had a deepening relationship with that campus, and I'll say a couple of other things about that, but Dean Blackman is here and his colleagues from the School of Biology. And Brooklyn College has had a long history of working with us. When we first started to dig into some of the details here, I mean, what you've heard from the trainees and others is that there's a sense of becoming a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, an engineer. And that's a sense that comes from families that are raising these children, from the children's own experiences. There's a clear sense of where they're headed with certain educational issues. In fact, one of the programs that is expensive for us and something that we're proud of is our MD PhD program, where I basically pay you to go to school. That said, it takes you twice as long because you're doing both the full MD and a full PhD. And my issue is never, when we're recruiting, is never with the student. My issue is with the parents of the student. Because those parents have an expectation that the student is going to finish their education and start working. They have extended and immediate family demands that are significant and in many cases substantially more than what a lot of our other students have to deal with. So it's a challenge. Even though I'm giving away an education for the highest degrees that you can obtain, they have pressures that really offset that. So part of the trick for us is understanding the why somebody wants to do research. And there are a lot of reasons why, but we don't always explain that well. Anytime you hear a student that says, I didn't really know what I needed to do, that's our failure in terms of explaining the why. But we also need to understand the why nots, and there are substantial why nots for a lot of our students. Any chance that I get to talk about some of our experiences, I like that. I'll say one thing before we get to that. Research is really in the throes of essentially disappearing in some ways. Our own curriculum in the College of Medicine, out of necessity, because there's so much to do, has shifted further and further away from the foundations of medicine and more toward the practice of medicine. And so if you want to be somebody like Milena or the other resident, I'm sorry, I would just butcher your name, and I apologize. If you want to be somebody like them, you recognize that you need a deeper foundation in the sciences than we've provided in the clinical training. So they understood the why, and then the trick is figuring out the why would they not do this. And it's really hard for them to do this additional work. And so it takes a village to put together the resources and guidance to help them accomplish what they're going to accomplish. But they'll be the future of medicine, and I think anything we can do to keep that going is good. I just got an email from someone, one of my students, a Medgar Evers student, that I love very much. Her name is Sophia Villiers. An email came to me asking for a reference for Sophia, and it was very simple. Is Sophia going to work hard? And so I wrote back, careful in what I said, but I said, Sophia's already, she's got 2 first author papers in press, and the 3rd one's been submitted. So I would say that, yeah, she's going to work hard. Sadly for me, I think she's taken to the Midwest. She's in Ohio, and that letter of recommendation went to Iowa. So I don't know. There's an attractiveness to the Midwest, especially if you've never been there before. So I think for us at Downstate, we have an opportunity to help the students that live here, the students that we have access to through these campuses like the University at Albany, Medgar Evers, and Brooklyn College, to really show them what we're able to give them guidance on. I mean, there are a lot of people here that have mentoring advice. But never forget that whenever we do things, a lot of things impact the ideas that come from the students. When we've had high school students here, right after the CSI TV shows came out, everybody wanted to be a forensic pathologist, and nobody wanted to be anything else. We had another fair, and we had somebody who said he wanted to be a pilot, and I said, well, what you really want to be is a flight surgeon, and then I'll see you walk on the moon the next time we go out that way, right? They've set their own boundaries based on their sense of what these jobs are, and I think we have an opportunity to try to open those windows up a bit. And so I think these programs are really good opportunities for us to do that. So, thank you.
So here comes the part of the day that you guys get to help us out. First let me promise you that lunch is coming very shortly after this activity. But let me ask you to look at the topics that are listed in your agenda. Topic 1 is barriers in academic institutions. 2 is workforce diversity. 3 is strategies for engaging community partners. 4, integrating genetics research into health disparities. And 5, interprofessional teams in health disparities. What we would like you to do is to stay right here in this room, but to go to the different groups and to discuss barriers and opportunities for each of these topics. At this time, you can break rules. You're going to break through the barriers that we have on the sides of the room, and I'm going to assign people as to where they might sit, just to talk about this. There should be in each group a person who will report out, and I'm being given these sheets of paper, actually these folders that identify. Okay, first, interprofessional teams in health disparities. So I'd like you to go over here to the back of the room on my left, your right, and we're going to place this on one of the chairs. So if you're interested in that topic, please follow this person, and let's talk about the barriers and opportunities in that area. Barriers in academic institutions, I'd like you to sit about maybe toward the front on this side, okay? Strategies for engaging community partners, if you'd like to sit all the way in the back on the right, so that would be on this side of the area. Workforce diverse, okay, I see no one moving. Tell me what's going on. I have to get feedback. Okay, we are trying to get groups of people to talk about these specific topics and to give us the barriers and the opportunities in these specific areas. So before I have people move, tell me what you're feeling, because as a psychologist, I know something's going on. So tell me. And you can be honest, because we can change on a dime. Yes, sir. Yes, doctor. Oh, you want me to go through the whole list? Okay. Okay. Workforce diversity was where Carla is standing. Okay? Oh, right? Here's workforce diversity. I'll bring it. Yes, but if we go back a little further, we can do workforce diversity. Okay? We have integrating genetics research into health disparities. Dr. Patu, you will go wherever you choose. Okay? This is two of the same thing. Strategies for engaging community partners we have already, right? I think that Lakia did two of each. So I think we're done. Okay? Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so again, interprofessional teams are back here. Well, what we want to get is enough people in a group so that we can at least report back on some of what the opportunities and the barriers are. Okay, so not too much skipping. I understand. What are your choices? Okay, I see lonely people sitting. Okay, good. Could you please record who the facilitator is, and could you record the barriers and the opportunities? Thank you.